Act, this is a civil rights law. It is the most recent version of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. Most of you all know the Legal Defense Fund, which I work for, litigated the case of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. What a lot of people don't know is once Brown versus Board of Education became law, and Brown said that this idea of separate but equal was unconstitutional, it was a violation of the law, no one really wanted to comply with it, right? So what a lot of people don't realize is we had another case, Brown 2, in 1955. And what happened is most states and districts chose to shut down their public schools rather than integrate and desegregate their schools. Prince Edward County in Virginia, where Kansas is, they shut down their public schools for 5 years because they did not want to integrate their schools. The Sunday before school opened again, and also 5 years is a lifetime in the life of a child. That's from like 12 to 17, okay? Not having access to public schools. The Sunday before the public schools opened, 4 little girls were killed in a church bombing in Birmingham. And so parents were terrified to send their children to school on that Monday. It was only through the assurance of the federal government to provide protections for students did parents actually feel comfortable sending, and not even comfortable isn't the right word, because I don't think anyone was comfortable. So they sent their children to school despite what we call this era of massive resistance. And so it wasn't until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act the next year in 65 that we had federal statutes, federal law, to which we could order compliance. And the way to secure compliance was by telling states and districts, you'll lose your federal funding. And this is important, even though federal funding is such a small percentage of overall education funding, it funds critical programs. It funds programs like Title I, serving districts that serve high numbers of low-income students. As you can see up here, it's $23.3 billion. Not million, that's billion with a B, in K-12 funding. And the whole goal was that poverty would not be a bar to accessing quality education. The idea that Lyndon Johnson, who was president when this was signed into law, who was also a former school teacher in West Texas, was that zip code should not be a bar to quality educational opportunities. And so that's why this is such a critical law. This is why it's critical for our work, because this is about protecting hard-fought civil rights protections and ensuring that all students have access to quality educational opportunities. You can't learn if you're not in school. So positive inclusive school climates underlie quality educational opportunities. So if you look at your FAQ document, it outlines what this law is. This replaces No Child Left Behind, or NCLB. So all the things under NCLB, the adequate yearly progress, the sanctions of the fear of closing the school or firing half the school staff, that's gone. That's gone. No Child Left Behind is no longer law. This replaces No Child Left Behind. In 2011, the Obama administration started granting states waivers from the sanctions of No Child Left Behind. So right now, 41 states in the District of Columbia are receiving waivers. Those waivers expire on August 1st of 2016. Okay, so if your state, which is like me is receiving a waiver, that's gone as of August. So what's going to replace the waivers will be what we call state plans. And I want to walk very quickly through the implementation process, you guys, just because this is moving so quickly. There were public hearings in January. We had several DSC members. Raise your hand if you spoke at the public hearings. There were public hearings here in LA and one in Washington, D.C. So we have Marlene, Gina, Zakia, Candace, Marika. We had several folks speak at the public hearings. And I can tell you, when we walk in with these red shirts now to any Department of Education meeting, they're like, oh, God, here we go. those dignity in schools people again, right? But we have to have a presence and a voice in this process. So that was January. I had the honor, if you will, of participating in the negotiated rulemaking committee. For basically the rulemaking committee writes out regulations to states for how you implement this law. And it was focused on Title I. Again, Title I is critical because this is about services and supports to districts serving high numbers of students in poverty.
Janelle,
yes.
Can you highlight the change of the Title I language in there that actually takes poverty out of the definition?
Yeah, we need to know that.
Why don't you highlight this is critical. I want to underscore Title I funds are supposed to be additional. They're supposed to be supplemental to equitable local funding.
Right.
Who lives in a district where you have equitable local funding? Okay. So that undermines the whole purpose of the law. If we get the local funding comes from different things like your tax revenue, etc., your local funding is actually supposed to be equitable. Your Title I fund should be for additional programs and services to address poverty. So those should be things like after-school programs, school climate and safety, positive behavioral interventions and supports. That's where the Title I money should go. It should not go to pay teacher salaries, which is what a lot of districts are doing because they don't have equitable funding. So that's why Title I is important. And Zakia, can you flag that change?
Yes, please.
So I don't know the definition verbatim, but I remember having a conversation with my local superintendent, and that was one of the things that we talked about and that she was extremely worried about as an urban district. In Ohio, we have 8 urban districts who do not have equitable funding. The property tax base is not obviously reliable, it's very low. You know, those industries are not there anymore. General Motors, all those kind of folks have picked up and left, and it's really left our economy in the tank, so to speak. So one of the things that I have been working on and trying very hard to get on is our state implementation team. I may have a backdoor way to get on there now, but it's being an advocate. And she and I have actually been working together to highlight the school, the positive school climate as an indicator. So she actually agreed with me that positive school climate should be an indicator in our state plan. And so for Ohio, we have this, the Council of the Urban 8, where the 8 Urban 8 superintendents and the 8 Urban 8 Teachers Union presidents all have a council where they talk, and they're like a lobbying firm to ask for certain things that we want in the state implementation team. So because of that relationship with her, one of the things that they will be making sure, since poverty has actually been taken out of the definition for Title I, the fear is that our state legislators will then take money from that Title I funding that we get from the federal government and spread it into other districts that don't actually need it. And so that's what we're working towards. And I'm putting that out there so that other communities and other states, you all know that that's an issue, and to start lobbying around that. Thanks.
Thank you, Zakia. And knowledge is power, you guys. That's why we're having this session right now. Yes, this is technical. Yes, this is boring. But let me tell you something. People benefit. I think I make it exciting, right? But this is the thing. People benefit from having the knowledge. And there are people, to be honest with you, who will depend on you not having the knowledge about this process, okay? So I'm going to flag number 4, key points for intervention. The focus of our session this morning will be on your state plans. Zakia mentioned, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, and we want to ensure again that everyone has this information. Your state plan is your state outlining how it will rate your public schools and how it will target your federal funding. Again, your state plan means how your state will rate all your public schools in your districts. That means your high-performing, low-performing schools, and how it will target its funding. This is your opportunity to ask your state to target funding for discipline alternatives. So when we stop talking about restorative practices and other practices, this is your opportunity, okay? But your states are starting to draft your state plans now. How many people in the room already know or have reached out to folks in your state about drafting your state plan? Okay, a few. Minnesota, Mississippi, Ohio, Virginia, Georgia, California. Okay, so states are moving ahead. And let me tell you something, they will move ahead with or without you.
Yes.
Okay? Don't expect to get an invitation, don't expect to get an email, don't expect to get a notification. They are writing your state plan now. That's why we will focus today on what goes in your state plan, how you can ask for targeted funding for discipline alternatives. I want to talk, Zakia mentioned an indicator. Your state has a choice of selecting 5 indicators to measure overall school quality and student success. Again, this is how your states will determine which schools are doing well and which are not. So the first 3 are mandatory. This is performance on tests, 4-year high school graduation rates, for the first time, progress in English language proficiency. That's actually a huge win. That means you need to ensure that students are gaining English proficiency. Now, the bottom 2 are really key as well because they're optional. So again, for your high schools, you have the 4-year graduation rates. For your middle and elementary schools, you have this optional indicator number 4. Student engagement, educator engagement, student access to and completion of advanced coursework, post-secondary readiness, and school climate and safety. I want to underscore, as a coalition, we chose to oppose this law. We opposed the law because we were concerned about any step back or any unnecessary restrictions on the federal role in education or federal oversight in education. Because this law gives a lot of power back to states and districts. It limits the role or ability of the federal government to intervene, to tell states that you're not going far enough, that your protections are not strong enough. It doesn't completely eliminate the federal role, but the federal role is diminished dramatically. So as a coalition, we oppose the law. However, we did secure a lot of wins in this law, a lot of funding for discipline alternatives, and a key win is this. For the first time in history, a school can be ranked and evaluated based on overall school climate and safety. But what's key about this is how do you define school climate and safety? If you have a district that's saying, we've improved our school climate and safety because we've added SROs, that's not good. So what's key for us is that we work with the states and the districts and telling them, how do we define school climate and safety? So we are going to break out into groups soon, but one key thing I want you to think about, not only to work with your state plan team to get them to select school climate and safety, and I do want to add, it's not that these other indicators aren't important. Yes, it's important to have student engagement, educator engagement, post-secondary readiness, etc. Those are all important things. But if you don't have positive and inclusive school climates, you won't be ready for post-secondary readiness because you'll be pushed out into the juvenile justice system. And if you have positive and inclusive school climates, you should have student engagement and educator engagement. Okay, so that's the argument for why school climate and safety is such a key indicator. It encompasses all these other indicators. So that's why we're urging states and districts to choose this indicator. And also, we want to hold districts and states accountable. If you are a school that is continuing to violate the civil rights of students and push them out of school and discriminate against them and target them, you should be held accountable. You should be held accountable for that. But what's key for us as you break out into the groups and talk about your work in drafting your state plans is, how do you define this? And honestly, it might be defined differently in Minnesota than it is in California. It might be defined differently in Mississippi. You might have very different factors that you want your schools and districts or states